paragraphs by Joe Brainerd about Frank O'Hara, who was a good friend of his. I remember that Frank O'Hara talked on the telephone a lot. He drank a lot, he smoked a lot, and he ate in Fred's restaurants a lot. I think that almost everything Frank did, he did a lot. He went to parties a lot, he laughed a lot, loved a lot, and cried a lot. Frank O'Hara went to extremes, or perhaps he just found himself there. I remember Frank O'Hara most in a clean white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, top button unbuttoned, and blue jeans, almost new, and moccasins, the good kind. Dark brown leather with buck lace and rubber soles. I remember watching the movie Romeo and Juliet with Leslie Howard and Norma Shearer on TV with Frank O'Hara several times, and how much he loved it. I remember that Frank O'Hara was always late. I remember Frank O'Hara putting down Andy Warhol, and then a week or so later, defending him with his life. If Frank O'Hara liked a movie one day, that didn't necessarily mean that he would like it the next day. Frank O'Hara was very intelligent, yet many of his likes and dislikes were purely emotional, depending on how he happened to feel at the moment. This could be infuriating, but it was terrific too. I mean, likes and dislikes are really pretty boring anyway, once you have them. I remember Frank O'Hara's tone of voice. It was a very definitive tone, fast, sharp, casual, offhand, to the point, no bullshit, sometimes sassy, elegant, but down to earth, brass tacks. I remember that you didn't get into an argument with Frank O'Hara unless you were a very good talker. Frank O'Hara was a star. I don't know if he knew it or not, but he was. Frank O'Hara had a way of entering the room. It's hard now to think of Frank O'Hara as being small, but I think he was. Not short really, but small. I remember his small waist, his small hands, and his small feet. I remember that sometimes his body seemed too small to support such a strong face. I remember Frank O'Hara's classical profile, beautiful and active, his high forehead, and his dark brown hair that curled up when it got long, his moist eyes, and his glowing red complexion, red partly, I think, from drink, and partly, I think, because he was Irish, or part Irish. I remember seeing Frank O'Hara write a poem once. We were watching a Western on TV, and he got up as though to answer the telephone or to get a drink, but instead he went over to the typewriter, leaned over it a bit, and typed for 4 or 5 minutes standing up. Then he pulled a piece of paper out of the typewriter and handed it to me to read. Then he lay back down and watched more TV. I don't remember the poem except that it had some cowboy dialect in it. Frank O'Hara could be impossible, more than impossible. Sometimes when he was drunk, he could be downright mean. But he was worth it. Some people can get by with a lot, and I'm all for it. If you can get away with it, Frank O'Hara could, and did. I remember Frank O'Hara as somehow being very vulnerable. At the same time, there was an air of confidence and superiority from him. This combination was electric. So that's just a few things that Joe Brainerd wrote about Frank O'Hara. And I'll read 2 poems. This is called NAFTA. Ah, Jean Dubuffet, when you think of him doing his military service in the Eiffel Tower as a meteorologist in 1922, you know how wonderful the 20th century can be. And the gated Iroquois on the girders, fierce and unflinching footed, nude as they should be, slightly empty like a Sonia Delaney. There is a parable of speed somewhere behind the Indians' eyes. They invented the century with their horses and their fragile backs, which are dark. We owe a debt to the Iroquois and to Duke Ellington for playing in the buildings when they are built. We don't do much ourselves but fuck and think of the haunting metro and the one who didn't show up there while we were waiting to become part of our century. Just as you can't make a hat out of steel and still wear it. Who wears hats anyway? It is our tribe's custom to beguile. How are you feeling in ancient September? I am feeling like a truck on a wet highway. How can you? You were made in the image of God. I was not. I was made in the image of a sissy truck driver. And Jean Dubuffet painting his cows with a likeness burst in the memory. Apart from love, don't say it. I am ashamed of my century for being so entertaining, but I have to smile. This is called Song. Is it dirty? Does it look dirty? That's what you think of in the city. Does it just seem dirty? That's what you think of in the city. You don't refuse to breathe, do you? Someone comes along with a very bad character. He seems attractive. Is he really? Yes, very. He's attractive as his character is bad. Is it? Yes. That's what you think of in the city. Run your finger along your no-moth mind. That's not a thought, that's soot. And you take a lot of dirt off someone. Is the character less bad? No. It improves constantly. You don't refuse to breathe, do you? Now I'm going to read two poems. This one is called Why I Am Not a Cave Painter. I am not a cave painter. I am a 21st century poet. Here's why. Ixtrig is starting a cave painting. I go back in time to see it. He offers me a drink of animal blood. It is thick and sweet. Placing his hand against the wall of the cave, he takes a swig of egg yolk mixed with rock powder. He spits the mixture all around his hand. Look, it is a beautiful stencil of a hand. But he is not done. Grabbing a chunk of red ochre, he draws curve after wide curve. It is an antelope he is summoning. But wait, a sleeping bear is summoned instead. The bear slaps Ixtrig. Ixtrig flees. I, being but a phantasm, a time-traveling enigma, cannot be hurt by the bear. But I must leave Ixtrig. I must return to 21st century Baltimore. I write a poem, Antelope Blood, full of the nothingness that separates me from Ixtrig and the somethingness that connects me to antelope blood. Here's a poem dedicated to Doug Lang. When Memphis minigan her guitar to glom, he whisked with our were butter beans and Susie's spicy, saucy, spousey chattering song. Me God, me heard some strings tug tight a howling forth from Pegleg Howe, a song with his bow. Egad, we tramped along a swampy tree-lined trail, paid cash for chicken box and liquor bar jar. The mammoth boots of Sonny Boy squeezing his heart by fattening frogs for snakes. Me God, the beautiful breasts of babes that danced, the folding tables piled with record albums, beans and greens. Sun-Ra in shiny garb, the merry band a-wassailing round the room. Lovely priestess of Ra, to Pluto too, as Sun-Ra's elves shook shakers round the trees. Aghast I gazed beside the stage, a black Orbison, 12-string strumming, sang The Restless Dead, Hangman Slack My Rope, and Old Joseph's Cherry Tree Carol, remembering the girl who whistled songs with me across the sea. And as the marching band began to thunder, bass drums bigger than tractor wheels, girls with woodwinds shaking their white tights in sync, I woke with a start, clutching my bedclothes near, and pondered Braxton's schemic dreams of multiphonic cheer.